So one last thing. So you've said before that you see one of the problems with pornography is that it mothers men. So it kind of nurtures boyhood
Yeah.
indefinitely. Could you explain that?
Yeah. So it occurred to me that virtually all men want to be mothered. They want someone who cares for them
Right.
unconditionally, who loves them unconditionally, and who basically just nurtures them. And when a lot of men try to get that out of their wife, and when they realize like, okay, my wife isn't doing a good job being my mother, then they're like, okay, well, where else can I find a mother? And so pornography provides a natural substitute, because like these women are giving the impression, their act is to show like, hey, all I care about is you right now. Like you're my main concern on it. It's coming from a screen, and there's no need to like to give. It's all taking. It's all being
Yeah.
cared for just in that
Right.
in that moment. So I
Mm.
think that's one of the big draws of porn.
Yeah. So it's perpetuating a, a feminine characteristic in men. You don't really think of like a man using pornography as a feminine activity. Is
Yeah,
that usually? I mean, it's the the research is out. You didn't really need to research it though. Men are way more users of pornography, subscribers to porn websites than women are.
yeah. Well, I think that's the so that would be the difference between being feminine and being what Paul calls in First Corinthians 6 effeminate, or literally like a
Okay.
soft man. And so it's not so much that he's being feminine, it's he's being a soft man, like he's given himself over to softness, to comfort, to ease, to convenience. And that same word is used of John the Baptist of John the Baptist when Jesus says, "Hey, when you guys went out to see John the Baptist, were you looking for someone in soft clothing? Like, hey, those men are in king's palaces. Like, you can find plenty of soft men in king's palaces. Like men who have given themselves over to luxury and ease." He's like, that wasn't John the Baptist. And so yeah, the soft man is the one who has given himself over to that. And so it's no surprise that he says the soft men, the effeminate, will not inherit the kingdom of
Mm.
God, because you can't go after God and take up your cross and follow Christ while simultaneously pursuing ease and convenience and comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So, what would you say? Let's say somebody's watching this and they're like, "Okay, I'm convinced. I need to quit porn. It's bad." And I've maybe God is working on them and they actually see it as an offense to a holy God,
Hmm.
and not just as something that's producing shame and a lack of motivation in their life. But what if somebody were to come to you and say, I feel like I'm too far gone. Like I've had an addiction for a decade, 2 decades. So like, but they say to you at the same time they want to quit. What would be like the first step of quitting porn?
Um, well, I think the first step would be like if somebody has actually gotten to that state where they recognize like who they are before God, then they're in a really good place. Like Jesus said, I didn't come for the healthy but for the sick. And so if someone is sick, then they're in like the perfect place to come to Jesus, the good physician. So that's what I would say. Like, hey, recognize who you are, and recognize the only provision that God has made for wicked sinners like you are,
Mm.
and go to Him. It's in Jesus Christ and Him alone. Um, and when that happens, like being born again of the Spirit, like no longer just having the power of the flesh in you, but also the power of the Spirit. Paul says I think it's in Ephesians, he says the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit lusts against the flesh. And so before there was only the flesh, and now there's a battle. And so yeah, now you're in the thick of it. But as Jesus says, with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And so now there's actually hope.
Yeah, it almost seems like you're saying that just somebody going, "Wow, I'm really broken. Like I'm really messed up," is like a good thing. You
Yeah.
usually don't view that as a good thing, but that's a necessary thing to happen for you to stop like pushing it under the rug and going, well, if I, it's like, what is it? In Homer Simpson, he's like failing this class that he has to take for work or something. And he's like, well, if I really tried, like I'd get an A in it. And then he actually tries and then he fails. So he's like, man, it was almost worse like coming out of the fog and looking at myself in the mirror, because now I actually really know I'm like a nobody. but like for people on porn, there's no diminishing returns to coming out of the fog and going, you know what, I'm enslaved to this. Like I can't stop, and I need help. That's like, if you do that, you're leaps and bounds beyond so many people. Not that it's a pecking order or a dominance hierarchy or there's competition, but so many people don't get to that point. Like I know I had one guy that one of my first clients was in his 60s, and he had just come out of the fog and said, I need help. And he had been addicted since he was a kid. So like, don't wait till you're 60 years old to come out of the fog.
But like you said though, that like, make sure like, why do you want to get help?
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a lot of reasons that you could want to get help that aren't actually going to bring you out of it, or really going to be helpful. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus has given us a specific way for how people deal with, and it's not, you mentioned to me one of the problems of modern psychology is seeing everything as an illness, and or seeing yourself as a victim of something. Or like I was talking to one guy at the local seminary who's a biblical counselor, and he was thinking that all of it comes down to homeostasis, like societal conditions push you into comfort zones that are bad, and so it's a breaking out of homeostasis. And I just was like, man, I don't feel like you're getting it. Like, it's the root of the matter is that we are enslaved to sin. Like, sin is like this power that reigns over us. It's not just something you do; it's a power, and like because of the nature, the evil nature within. And I mean, this has been talked about for thousands of years, but it's like the novelty of a new idea. It can just take over. It comes and goes,
yeah,
and it withers, right? Yeah, it's the problem is us. It's a heart problem.
Yeah.